That night, the atmosphere in the studio suddenly quiet. The camera was still on, the lights were still shining on two figures sitting opposite each other. But there was something in the air that was different. Jungkook stared at Jimin, initially with his usual professional expression during filming. But in the next few seconds, the smile on his face slowly disappeared. He never expected that the scene, which was originally just part of the scenario, would turn into something so real and shake his heart. As the first tears fell from Jimin's eyes, Jungkook fell silent. Not because he didn't know what to say, but because he knew that crying wasn't part of the script. The crew around them also held their breath. No one dared to speak. Scenes that should be repeated if they are too emotional are allowed to run because they know that something honest and unrepeatable is happening in front of the camera. "I don't know why, but I really feel sad," Jimin said quietly after the shoot was over. His voice trembled, like someone who had just opened an old wound that had never been spoken of. Jungkook looked at her for a long time, trying to find words, but only a short murmur came out. "You're really crying." For Jungkook, that moment became one of the most powerful memories of his entire career. He was used to all forms of acting, performance, and improvisation on stage, but this time it was different. Jimin's tears are not acting. It was real, and he could feel it to the bone. After the shooting was over, the room instantly became silent. Jimin didn't speak to anyone right away, just sitting in a makeup chair with his head down, while Jungkook remained in place, staring at the floor like someone who had just realized something big. Several staff members tried to approach, but Jungkook raised his hand slowly, gesturing for them not to approach first. There was a silence that was difficult to explain. Maybe because everyone knows the emotional relationship between the two in the real world is very deep. They're not just group mates. They're already like brothers, two human beings who grew up together under the same pressures, seeing each other's fragile sides. So when Jimin actually burst into tears, Jungkook knew that it wasn't just part of the job, it was an overflow of feelings that had been stifled a few hours later. In a small dugout in the corner of the building, Jungkook finally approached Jimin. He brought 2 cups of hot tea, one of which he held out without saying much. "You know," he said slowly, "I thought you were just going to pretend." Jimin smiled a little, but his eyes still looked puffy. "I think so too," he replied. But suddenly everything felt too real. "I don't know why I couldn't help that feeling." Jungkook just nodded, staring out the dark window. It rained slowly, as if the world outside understood the atmosphere they experienced that night. A few weeks after the incident, interviews with the production crew were leaked to Korean entertainment media. One of the director's assistants even said that Jimin's cry was the most sincere moment they had ever seen on the set. "We could all feel the energy," they said. "It wasn't just a scene. It was like a personal story that suddenly appeared in front of the camera." Since then, fans have begun to notice subtle changes in Jimin and Jungkook's relationship on various occasions. Nothing drastic, but there is a calmer, warmer, and more cautious closeness. For ARMY, the moment became a symbol of how deep the relationship between the two members was. Many wrote emotional comments on social media, saying that they could feel Jimin's honesty from his tears and Jungkook's sincerity in the way he stared. Some wrote, "That's not acting for ARMY." The moment became a symbol of how deep the relationship between the two members was. Many wrote emotional comments on social media, saying that they could feel Jimin's honesty from his tears and Jungkook's sincerity in the way he stared. Some wrote, "That's not acting. It was a real feeling caught on camera." Another commented, "Jungkook, it was a real feeling caught on camera." Another commented, "Jungkook seemed like someone who wanted to hug her, but held back knowing it wasn't the right time." In a short time, the footage of the video went viral, and even the international media highlighted how the authenticity of the emotions could create a more powerful moment than any dialogue. In an interview a few days after the incident, Jungkook finally opened up. He admitted that he also almost cried when he saw Jimin in an interview a few days after the incident. Jungkook finally opened up. He admitted that he also almost cried when he saw Jimin completely dissolved in his feelings. "I didn't know what to do. I just stood there, looking at him, and my heart was racing. I knew Jimin was struggling with a lot of things inside of him. And that night, it all just came out." He added that the moment made him realize something important about their friendship. We've been through so much together, but that night, I realized that we still had sides that didn't fully understand each other. It makes me want to take better care of him. Meanwhile, Jimin in his own interview only smiled when the topic came up. I never intended to cry, she said shyly. But I think sometimes we can't pretend to be strong all the time. There comes a time when we have to let those feelings out. I don't regret it, even though it was captured. Meanwhile, Jimin in his own interview only smiled when the topic came up. I never intended to cry, she said shyly. But I think sometimes we can't pretend to be strong all the time. There comes a time when we have to let those feelings out. I don't regret it, even though it was captured on camera. His words reflect someone who is already at peace with his weaknesses. And maybe that's what makes the fans love him even more. They see Jimin not only as an idol with perfect charm, but also a human being with real emotions. Some Korean entertainment analysts even called the moment a rare occurrence that shows the human side of idols in a stressful industry. In a world where imagery is often carefully orchestrated, such honesty is rarely seen. Jimin's cry, although simple, seemed to break through the wall between the camera and reality. And Jungkook, with his silent gaze that night, became a witness of something that some Korean entertainment analysts even called the moment a rare occurrence that shows the human side of idols in a stressful industry. In a world where imagery is often carefully orchestrated, such honesty is rarely seen. Jimin's cry, although simple, seemed to break through the wall between the camera and reality. And Jungkook, with his silent gaze that night, became a witness of something that perhaps only those who really knew each other could understand beyond the glare of the stage lights. After the incident, the relationship between the two seemed more balanced. Jungkook became a little more considerate in public interactions, often patting Jimin on the shoulder or giving sincere little smiles whenever they were together at events. While Jimin, who used to tend to harbor emotions, seemed more open. He no longer covers fatigue or awkward feelings in front of the camera, and that is precisely what makes him even more loved. ARMY began writing theories about how the moment might be a turning point in their emotional relationship, not in a romantic context, but as two best friends who finally understand each other's depths. When BTS performed together at a small commemorative event after a member's military service, many fans noticed the way Jungkook and Jimin looked at each other on stage. Something has changed, quieter, but also warmer. Jungkook no longer joked as much as when BTS performed together at a small commemorative event after a member's military service. Many fans noticed the way Jungkook and Jimin looked at each other on stage. Something has changed, quieter, but also warmer. Jungkook no longer joked as much as he used to. Jimin no longer covered his feelings with excessive laughter. They seemed more honest with each other, as if that moment of tears had opened a new space between them that was previously closed. The media began to highlight the change and try to interpret its meaning. Some write the media began to highlight the change and try to interpret its meaning. Some write that this is a testament to their emotional maturity after years of industry pressure. Others see it as a sign that they have gone through a difficult phase in group relationships and are now at a point where honesty is more important than image. Whatever the interpretation, one thing is certain. The moment in which Jimin cried in front of Jungkook has become one of the most powerful memories in the history of their journey as colleagues, friends and artists. And a personal note from a production staff member, which was later circulated on fan forums, it was written that after everyone went home that night, Jungkook was still sitting alone in the rehearsal room. He played the recording of the scene on his phone repeatedly, as if he wanted to understand something from the way Jimin stared before crying. He did not say anything, just silent while listening to the sound of rain that kept falling outside the window. "I can't forget that expression," he later told the staff accompanying him. "It's like losing something that hasn't even happened." The following days, the atmosphere between the two of them returned to normal on the surface.